The stage of Ireland's Got Talent glowed with its usual brilliant lights, but tonight the air carried a strange heaviness, as if something extraordinary was about to unfold. A small, thin boy from Cebu City stepped forward, clutching an old guitar that looked almost as fragile as he was. The wood was chipped, the strings unevenly tightened, and the strap was made from a piece of worn-out cloth tied together by hand. His clothes told a story even before he spoke. A faded t-shirt with a small tear at the shoulder, jeans that had been patched multiple times, and slippers that looked like they'd been repaired more often than replaced. He didn't hide his trembling. He didn't know how to. Every step he took seemed filled with a mixture of fear and hope, and he kept glancing up at the bright lights that were far more glittering than anything he had ever seen back home in Cebu. When he introduced himself, his voice was barely above a whisper. He explained that he came from a small riverside community where the water often rose during storms, flooding their tiny home made of plywood and rusted tin. He told the judges he had grown up listening to the sound of his parents arguing about how to stretch what little money they had, how sometimes they would go without rice so the younger siblings could eat. Music, he said, was his escape, the thing that kept him going when nights grew too dark or too hungry. The moment he said that, the entire audience fell silent, sensing the honesty of his struggle. One of the judges sat up straighter, eyebrows lifting with genuine concern, already feeling something pull at her heart. Then he lifted his guitar, took a shaky breath, and began to sing Hotel California. The first chord was soft but full of emotion, like the opening of a wound that had never healed. His voice came out raw and trembling, each note soaked with years of quiet suffering. It wasn't the perfect polished sound of a trained artist. It was the voice of a boy who had sung through pain, through hunger, through nights when he wondered if life would ever get better. As the song continued, his eyes filled with tears he didn't try to hide. A single tear slipped down his cheek when he reached the first chorus, and it was as if that tear carried every struggle he had ever endured. The judges leaned closer, their faces tightening with emotion. One put a hand over her heart, the other placed his hands flat on the desk as if steadying himself. Another judge blinked rapidly, trying hard not to cry too early. The camera zoomed in, revealing the boy's small hands shaking on the strings, his lips trembling as he poured every ounce of himself into the performance. The entire studio seemed to lean toward him, caught in a spell of quiet disbelief. By the time he finished the first verse, a deep stillness had taken over the room, the kind of silence that happens only when people are witnessing something that changes them. His voice echoed through the space even after he paused, and it felt like the whole world was holding its breath for him. As the song continued, the boy's voice began to shift. What started as trembling vulnerability slowly grew into a steady stream of emotion, as if he were remembering why he sang in the first place. The more he sang, the more the stage seemed to brighten around him, and the once frightened child from Cebu City transformed into someone who carried the strength of every hardship he had survived. His voice wrapped itself around the iconic lyrics of Hotel California, but the meaning felt new, deeper, almost like a message he had held inside for years. The spotlight illuminated every tear that slid down his face and every uneven breath he took, but none of it looked like weakness. It felt like truth. The audience could feel it. Some people had already begun crying quietly, others covered their mouths in shock. Even those who had no idea what life in Cebu was like could sense the weight behind his voice. He wasn't just singing a song, he was offering a piece of himself. Each note carried memories, nights when the river beside their home overflowed and their family had to climb onto makeshift shelves to stay dry. Mornings when he would wake up hoping the day would bring a little more food. Evenings when his mother returned home exhausted from washing clothes for neighbors, apologizing for not bringing enough. He remembered singing to his siblings when they were scared during storms, using his voice to distract them from the roaring wind outside. The judges were visibly affected. One judge leaned back in his chair, shaking his head slowly as if unable to process how a boy so young could embody such sorrow and strength. Another judge wiped tears that kept forming no matter how hard she tried to hide them. A third judge let out a shaky breath, eyes locked on the boy as if afraid to blink and miss a moment. Each lyric seemed to sink deeper into them, touching something too real to ignore. When the song reached the guitar solo, he didn't play every note perfectly. His fingers stumbled slightly on the strings, but the imperfections only made the moment more human. Every strum carried a trembling energy, as though the guitar itself was crying along with him. The audience held their breath. The judges stared, unblinking, as the boy poured everything he had into the performance. When he sang, "You can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave," his voice cracked in a way that felt like a blade cutting through the room. It was the kind of crack that came from a lifetime of swallowing pain. The toughest judge reached up to wipe his eyes, embarrassed but unable to stop the tears flowing down his cheeks. The boy ended the performance by gently lowering his guitar and bowing his head, unable to look up. He didn't expect applause. He didn't expect praise. He had already given everything he had. But the moment he finished, something powerful began to shift in the air. It was the kind of silence that comes right before the world explodes. When the final note faded, the room remained silent for a few seconds. Those heavy, unforgettable seconds when no one knew how to react to what they had just witnessed. Then suddenly the entire audience rose to their feet and erupted into cheers so loud they shook the studio. People clapped with both hands over their heads, some crying, others shouting the boy's name as if he were already a star. The boy lifted his head slowly, his eyes wide with disbelief. He had never heard applause like this. He wasn't sure he had ever heard applause at all. His breath caught in his chest, and his lips trembled as he tried to comprehend what was happening around him. One of the judges stood up abruptly, her entire body shaking with emotion. She pressed both hands to her face, wiping tears away before they even had time to fall. Then she slammed her hand down on the golden buzzer with a force that echoed across the stage. The moment her hand hit the button, a burst of golden confetti exploded from above, raining down on the poor Cebuano boy as if the heavens themselves had opened. The confetti sparkled under the stage lights, swirling around him like a magical storm. The boy gasped, dropping his guitar as both hands flew to his face. He began to sob, loud, raw, uncontrollable sobs that shook his shoulders. Years of pain, fear, hunger, and hopelessness poured out of him in that single moment. He had never imagined a life where someone would press a golden buzzer for him. He had never imagined being seen, being heard, being valued. For the first time he felt like he mattered. The judges rushed onto the stage to reach him. The audience screamed louder. Even the show's hosts appeared from the sides, trying to hold back their own tears. The toughest judge, the one known for never crying, never smiling, never showing emotion, walked directly up to the trembling boy. His face was red, eyes glassy with tears he was too overwhelmed to hide. He placed both hands on the boy's shoulders and bent down to speak to him through the noise. The microphones barely picked it up, but the boy heard every word. "You have one of the most powerful, emotional voices we've ever had on this stage. You moved every soul in this room." The boy broke down even harder, covering his face as the judge pulled him into a tight embrace. The audience roared with approval as more confetti fell around them. Another judge gently lifted the boy's chin, whispering, "Your story will change lives. Your voice will travel far beyond this stage." The boy tried to respond, but his words dissolved into sobs. His entire body trembled, overwhelmed by joy and disbelief. He thought of his mother working in Cebu, of his siblings waiting at home, of their small house patched together with hope more than materials. He imagined their faces when they learned what he had done. For the first time in his life, the future no longer felt like a distant dream. It felt real. It felt possible. As the confetti settled and the audience continued chanting his name, the poor boy from Cebu City realized something life-changing. He had taken the pain that once weighed him down and turned it into something beautiful, something that made even the strongest hearts break open and cry.